Hi, everyone. Good morning and welcome to the Unique Peace podcast. I'm Janice. I am the Quiet Healer. I'm a Reiki Master Teacher and Intuitive Medium here on Long Island. Today, we're going to be speaking with Jennah. She is a soul guide. She walks people through connecting with their own soul and nature. And she's going to tell us what brings her peace today. Welcome, Jennah.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
I'm
Happy
so
to be
excited.
here.
So excited to see you. So I want to start off with, we both grew up in Colorado. You grew up in Ward, I grew up in Denver, and now you're in Australia. So kind of talk about how that came about.
Yeah, well, I've always loved traveling since I was a kid, even though Ward was a tiny town of 200 people, a total hippie town. My parents
Yeah.
both were there as hippies. And um, then I went to college in Brooklyn in New York City. So I definitely wanted to explore. People are always like, how did you go from this tiny town of 200 people in the mountains of Colorado to New York City? And I was like, well, there's, weird people in both places.
Yeah, you can find weird yeah, I get it.
Ward, the nickname was like Wardos. And a lot of people from the East Coast actually moved there to kind of like escape. So yeah, I've always loved just exploring and done some traveling throughout my life. And in this current chapter, as I'm in my 39th year, I was called to just really make some big changes as we were coming out of the pandemic and the travel ban or the mask, whatever mandate was lifted on planes, even though I didn't really know that was correlating with the timing. But I had lived back in Colorado for since 2010, so about 12 years. And part of my intention when I moved back from New York was to travel, to have Colorado be a home base for traveling. And I did that to a certain degree in those 12 years. Went on a few spiritual pilgrimages and women's retreats and vacations and things. But I was really like, in 2022, there's just something I'm not I'm not really stepping into in my life that I feel like I'm meant to at this point. And part of that was, the next level of my own soul growth. And it's turned out that traveling has had something to do with that. So last summer, I joined this house sitters network and have basically been traveling I'm on my 9th house sit now in various places around the world. I went to
Awesome.
Scotland and England and a number in the States. And now I've landed in Western Australia, where it's summertime. I'm watching all my friends, and family on Facebook having the deep freezes and snows. I'm like,
They're getting hit.
yeah,
They're
yeah,
getting hit.
yeah. I'm in the desert beach here in Western Australia. So that is, a bit about how I've come here, but feel free to ask other, specific questions.
So you recently went to Scotland. So talk about that adventure to, which island was it again?
The Isle of Iona.
Iona.
So yeah, I had heard a friend talk about her pilgrimage to Scotland a number of years ago. And then just over the years, my guides just always pointed out like, oh, there's that pilgrimage to Scotland, or there's that. And so I definitely felt that inkling or that calling, like something was there. And it turned out that I was meant to go kind of by myself, not with a group. That's a big part of the travels right now. And the Isle of Iona was actually a trip I did between house sits. I was supposed to do some other ones, but things got canceled. But I already had that ticket, and so I decided to go
And take that
anyway. So I have my own little personal retreats between some of the house sits. And yeah, I felt a really deep level of peace on that island. And it is only about 1 or 200 people, similar to where I grew up in Ward.
Yep.
Uh, it's very windy at night, especially the time of year I was there, just before they like close it down for the season, which
Oh,
were
okay.
also very windy. And they don't allow cars on the island unless you live there. So it's 1 mile by 3 miles wide. So I just really, and I didn't even get to explore everything in my 3 or 4 nights there, because there's just so many like, it's almost like vortexes on the island of these nature
Oh,
spots.
okay. Wow.
Um, that also there's the history of, it's called the cradle of Christianity. And there's an old ruins of a nunnery and an old monastery. A Saint Columba came there, and people used to stop there along their tour of Christianity back when it was, in its heyday in that area. And now it's just historical sites, although they still do have service in the church and stuff like that. But what I found really interesting was the nature that I felt. I really felt this connection that of like how the things that have happened throughout history have birthed out of nature. It started with Mother Earth and everything that was created on a land and life level, and then over time, different things like spiritual centers and churches and cities. I felt this also in Sydney of the sacred energy there of the land and the indigenous people. And so in Iona, yeah, they're just these amazing, like you go to each beach, there's maybe like 3 or 4 or 5 beaches, and each one has a totally different energy,
Yeah.
as a different history too, like the Vikings invading at one point, which since I have Norwegian in my DNA as well as English Scottish, it was like this.
It's a weird homecoming.
Getting to look at that soul level DNA too, where there's things in my genetics that maybe have like this historical imprint of where they're at war with themselves. So getting to recognize that and find the peace, bring that neutrality and peace, it was really equalizing.
Nice. Nice. And speaking
Mhm.
of peace, so how do you find peace? What brings Jennah peace?
Yeah. So what, I always say is peace is created from within. Really, I think it's a vibration that or experiences as a vibration I can channel and I can find anywhere I am. Yet there are things outside of myself that remind me of it or reflect it back to me or help, are in that vibration already. So it's kind of like co-regulation, nervous system co-regulation, which some of us have heard about, how a mother kind of regulates a child to feel safe with the nervous system. So like nature is one of those places for me when I just really ground into the heart of the earth. Um, I can feel that peace because there's that sense of stability through change. Like, even though there is a lot of things that might bring up fear within me in
Yes.
nature. I'm in Australia now and there's snakes and spiders.
Crocodiles.
Oh yeah, crocodiles. I didn't even think about those. Sharks in the water, poisonous plants, and there's are all these things in nature, but the beautiful thing about nature is that it just goes on living, it goes through the cycles of rebirth and death and growth and rebirth. And so to me, that heart of the earth really provides that stability through change. So by consciously connecting with that, with the earth and that sense of stability that's there, no matter what is changing or what cycle I am in as a soul, it's like a deep, well of peace that I can relax into.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
And so you find nature as very centering and grounding to help you find that peace. You can just sit out by a blanket or on the beach and just find that inner knowing.
Yeah, it's kind of like being at peace or in harmony with how things work on this planet.
Okay.
If we were to go a little bit spiritual with it or, meta in that way, that is part of the planet is that constant cycle of change of being here on Earth. So even by sitting within the wildness or the chaos of all the elements and everything that's going around and finding my center within that and recognizing I have those aspects within me too. It is kind of like the center of the storm, right? The
Right. Yeah.
eye of the hurricane.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're the calmness with all the chaos going around. I totally can resonate with that. It's like you guys can do your thing. I'm just gonna sit here and be me.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. Connecting with my body, I think as souls or as spirits, our energy can be all over the place. The aura, the human aura of the soul, the energy field, it can move about or we can go in and out of our body as spirit. And so like when you mentioned, right, you guys can all just do your thing.
Right.
You might notice that when there's drama happening in the world at a family event or on Facebook when comments are flying back and forth about a controversial
Mhm.
subject. But I find for myself when I return back home to my body, right, which is that grounded space, that's where I can connect with kind of the truth of what is actually really going on and not be at war with in that kind of mental, intellectual thought form field, which I think is really common in
Right.
the world today. Yeah. Yeah.
So, another question I love to ask is, how do you bring others peace?
Mhm. Yeah. Well, I really just like to hold space um, for them to find it within themselves and follow their own guidance of what that journey looks like, of what they need maybe outside of themselves to reflect that back. So, and when I say hold space, what that means to me is kind of just allowing the energy of divinity, your source, to come in and connect people up with their own inner guidance, their own intuition, their own sense of hearing and seeing and feeling, because that sense of self-awareness, if I can guide people, on a soul level to be aware of their soul and that awareness of their embodiment, then from there, I think it's just a lot easier to make choices, um, to be in harmony, which is that vibration that leads to like allowing yourself to bring in more love and peace and make those choices and know that you're consciously like creating your reality.
Right.
Mhm. Yeah.
So, I noticed that one way I think you would be helping people and bringing them peace is you do the cacao ceremonies.
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
I think that is very peaceful and very healing, and that's a two note thing where it's healing, but it can also be very peaceful. So
Hmm.
can you walk us through how that might help someone be at peace on their in their
Mhm.
journey in life and in their healing.
Yeah, well, and I can share about that even from my personal experience of I've been working with this particular cacao lineage for um, about 4 years now, so since 2018, and almost daily ceremony with just myself and being aware of myself. And there is a beautiful, just loving spirit and energy that is connected to the cacao, this cacao lineage, and she's just very gentle and loving. So she's like reminded me of that's possible to have just that gentle, loving, unconditional support um, wherever I am. So, and that kind of gives me the courage to become aware of the different parts of me that are maybe disconnected from peace or at war with myself or at war with other people. And um, it also, because it's something that, people drink, and when I drink, it's working on that like body chemistry
Okay.
level and the brain as well, right? So, and the nervous system level. So, when there's that intention set for that connection with deep, deep, unconditional love and um, integrating that, right, with the body and the body chemistry and the physiology,
Right.
it is like that spirit embodiment all wrapped up into one.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Now, a cacao ceremony is different than hot chocolate. People have to understand that. There, it's like roasted raw, not raw chocolate. It's roasted, but it's never processed.
Mhm.
So you think that, well, that obviously has an effect on the body chemistry. Can you kind of enlighten us on how so?
Yeah, well, everything has an energy and everything has a frequency. So, how food is prepared and how intentionally anything is prepared, food or, the setup for a session is going to affect the relationship with it. So, this cacao is very intentionally prepared. It's actually been protected by the Mayan Quiche people with a specific recipe through over the years, like kind of waiting for the world to be ready for it. And they chose the founder of it specifically, and a Mayan priestess prepares it. She blesses
Oh,
each of it.
nice.
And even before
Cool.
that, as it is harvested by the women, everything's all done by women. And the women that pick it and harvest it say prayers as they are working with it. And then it goes to the priestess and she blesses it with the energy of the Mayan calendar on that day. So each batch has its own unique infusion. And back to kind of your question of it not being just like hot chocolate.
Yeah, it's so not. I've
Um,
had it. It's really, I like the cacao.
yeah, it's the pure stuff,
Yeah.
before the nutrients have been stripped with it. Because basically, most chocolate, all the nutrients and all the cocoa butter are stripped from it. Sometimes, then the cocoa butter goes into beauty products, right? So, so all the beauty is left in the cacao, and it's the raw form of cacao. All the beauty, the love, the nutrients. There's a lot of nourishing nutrients and health benefits to it. That really, when something is coming as straight from source as possible, it goes all the way through from spirit to the physical expression of something. And that's,
Beautiful.
nature shows us that too. Why is nature so beautiful? Why is that just one place so many people look and see God, even if they don't believe in God? Or
Exactly.
get that sense of awe and wonder because it's untouched, it's pure, it's that expression from source manifested into its pure form.
Beautiful. And you had mentioned parts work. So, can you explain a little bit about what parts work is and how you, as either a friend or a practitioner, would help somebody find peace while doing that? Because that sounds a little intense.
Well, parts work for me was really sort of missing piece in all the spiritual training I had done for, over almost a decade or something. And being able to go to really high spiritual vibrations and frequencies, my nervous system and body was having a hard time integrating some of that. And I am not an expert in any parts work modalities or stuff. It's just kind of like my own definition of what I've pieced together through doing the work myself with different coaches and practitioners. Yeah. So it's kind of like looking at a disconnected part, a part that's been disconnected from source or that pure expression, right? It's kind of like the little voices we hear in our heads, right? That old thing they show in sitcoms and movies where there's the devil and the angel on the shoulder, right? That can be an example of parts work, like the little one saying that the devil, quote unquote, that's saying like, yeah, be the rebel. Maybe there's a rebellious part that's saying it doesn't matter what's aligned. You just need to do the opposite of what everyone else says. And then there's the angel who's like, it has to be perfect and pure. And if you're, kind of almost that fake perfection, like
I was going to say there's a danger in perfection. So, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And so the parts work is just looking at where there's maybe an inauthenticity. That's a hard word to say, ironically. Authentic. Where there's not an authentic connection. But that's for a reason. There might be some sort of trauma or training or programming that kind of created that part, right? Like, in our world, we're trained, or in the United States, we're trained to be successful heroes,
Right.
So there is that sense of perfection, like have to be perfect, and the success that can come in, right? And so it's just really recognizing where that happened, and also like the age as we're growing up, the brain gets formed around those specific experiences or traumas where those parts maybe became isolated or disconnected.
Right.
And so there's a body chemistry thing going on. So yeah, it can definitely be very intense work, but it's kind of up to that moment at the growth edge, right? Where it's like, oh, there's something in my subconscious that wants to become conscious, but I'm terrified of it. And is it safe? And, to shift. And so it's definitely something to be taken with a lot of care and consideration.
Right. And when someone is doing something like that, now you said you're not an expert, and I understand that, but somebody's doing that. That comes with a lot of stress and anxiety at times. You're addressing trauma, you're addressing maybe repressed memories, or trying to get past a toxic parent or that family member you never want to hug at Christmas. So how would, like, if someone were to come to you and say, how do you do it? How do you find peace? Can you show me? What are some of the things you would kind of guide them towards doing?
Well, one, I would say it's not a magic pill, and there's no quick fix.
But how would you help them find peace?
Yeah, yep, totally. Well, that first thing is just accepting that, I guess where it's going with that it's a process, right? And it can sometimes we find peace in an instant for 5 minutes until then we're thrown back into that old
Yeah.
that old trigger, right?
The chaos, yes.
It's a process to find that equilibrium, and it's kind of like a muscle. So like how we go to the gym to, strengthen our legs or our back or whatever. It's kind of like a muscle, and that rewiring is a process. But certain key things like breathing, breathing help, and that practice of grounding and centering, seeing if you can remove yourself from the charge, right? Often
Right.
when something is charged or there's that trigger, it's like diving into that scene as if there was like a movie or a picture, right, of that memory. And then all of a sudden we're lost in that picture and that charge of it, whether it's fear or doubt. And that's like running the show. So it's kind of like they say with dreams, right? If you recognize you're in a dream, you can wake up from the dream. So it's kind of like that, like recognizing like, oh, I'm in the charge of that memory, and I can just step out and put that on the wall and examine it from that place of
Yeah.
being the observer. So but breathing, I think, is definitely the first thing, and reaching out for help too. If you're not at a resourced enough place to be able to notice you're in a picture or put it on the wall or work with it yourself, it's like reaching out to a professional or finding a YouTube video. I actually will use tonal music
I
sometimes.
love use that. I love
Yeah,
finding the right tone.
yeah,
That's beautiful.
yeah, the frequencies, like, they've got like the love frequency or the abundance frequency, or um,
Yep. I
there's
I
like,
will ask, especially if I can't get to sleep right away, I will ask my guides, "What do I need to listen to?" I put it on, and
mhm,
then I just listen to it as I go to sleep. So I love that. I love doing
yeah,
that.
yeah, that's a really just easy things to kind of get the brain out of that loop too, right? It's like when someone notices they're in the loop, it's like, okay, how do I just shift this a little bit, even to be able to get some perspective.
Cool.
Mhm.
So, you also teach classes, and, you've had some interesting, um, interactions with your students. We spoke of that. However, when you teach your classes, what are some of the things that you've noticed that maybe your students have guided you on, shifting in helping you find peace or a little bit of calm each day?
I like how you reversed that question. It's like, I'm teaching the class, but what are my students guiding me to, right? So that is really important, that is always important for me to remember that. We are all each other's student
Mm,
and
yep.
teachers. And let's see, what have they guided me to remember? It's like I haven't consciously, looked at that much, but um, it is part of it is remembering, part of what they do guide me to is just remember that I'm a person too. Even if I have the teacher hat on in those moments, that I am the person, and that sense of awe and wonder. Like, one of the reasons I love teaching is seeing people discover these things about themselves or remember, themselves as a soul, or how to use their clairvoyance, or trusting their intuition. It's like seeing that beginning remembrance open up reminds me too that I'm always a beginner, living from moment to moment, and that I can bring that to my life. It's almost like an accountability thing too. Like, whatever I'm telling my students or whatever comes through my channel when I'm teaching is often as much of a message for me as it is for
It's for
them.
them. Yep.
Mhm. Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
that's very true. And sometimes the lessons you're teaching, the response that is received is a lesson for you, or an echo saying,
Mhm.
oh, so that's very cool. Now,
Yeah.
if someone were to come to you and they were like very anxious because they have to address a conflict with a coworker, say, that they don't get along with, but they have to work with them, and they're like, it's causing them a lot of anxiety, a lot of undue frenzy. What are some of the things you would guide them to for finding peace within themselves so that they can peacefully handle the situation?
Mhm. Yeah, well, relationship spaces are one of my favorite things to look at because whether it's a coworker relationship or a romantic relationship or a family relationship, because there really is like a third universe almost, that co-creative space where there's like the thing going on with the person, the thing going on with the other person, and then there's like what they're co-creating.
Right.
So what I work with the person that I'm working with is like for them to recognize their role in that co-creative dynamic.
Yep.
And so sometimes you know, that involves them taking responsibility. And this is where, the drama triangle I always love that can come in of like, are they being the hero, the victim, or the villain? And are those coming from those disconnected parts? Or old, even soul patterning, past life patterning. Sometimes karma comes up of like
I was
the
just thinking karma. You want to get
past
rid of the
life,
karma.
past life the two people had together, and how that might be playing out in present time again. So by working just consciously with it, it becomes an opportunity to um, do something different, to choose something different, to kind of file away the past experience and release any guilt or shame around it, take responsibility for what that person can own, because you can't control what anyone else does. It's kind of like the serenity prayer.
Right,
You-
exactly.
um, that you can control what you can control, and then the wisdom to know the difference.
Yep, and
And
that's actually the hardest part, so
yes, yes. Yeah, and so just and then seeing how they want to show up, like once any of the ego energies, you might call them, guilt, shame, blame, um, victim energies, savior energies. Once that stuff is cleaned up a little bit, then it's like, okay, now with this clean slate, what do you want to bring? Who you get to choose who you are being in this relationship, regardless of what they're doing. And they may or may not shift, but it's ultimately like, you know, about the person choosing who they are showing up as.
So walk people through the drama triangle so that we can understand why that would be important to someone finding their own peace in situations of conflict.
Yeah.
Excuse me.
Um, yeah, there's really great YouTube videos of it, but I'll simply to explain, like, it's hero, victim, and villain. There's sometimes other words, but it's where we can go into these different parts of our psyche that maybe we've been programmed through movies or other life experiences. So if you're playing the hero in a relationship and you think that you need to save this person because they just can't do it themselves, they're not capable, right?
Right.
So then the hero actually is kind of controlling when it's unbalanced, right? There's like a healthy expression of some of these too, but they have different labels. I don't remember what they're called. Right?
Excuse me.
Hero is that is a little bit of like a control, like kind of trying to control or save. And then it can bounce a person in their brain And programming can bounce between those two, because then it's like if the hero isn't being appreciated, then they can go to the martyr of the victim, like, oh, no one appreciates what I do and everyone's just out to get me, or and the blame, right? The victim goes along with the blame and the shame too. Sometimes that this person is mean, even if the hero isn't part of it. It's like, this person is attacking me,
Right.
which maybe they are. But again, this is where someone gets to choose, right? And I'm not talking about more serious victim cases where there's
No.
altercations or anything. It's more psychological. And then the villain is where, okay, where just that person becomes the attacker, right? And sometimes that can even become out of self-protection. Like, okay, so this person's attacking me, so I'm going to attack them back, or I'm going to be malicious or manipulative and all that. So, all of those things, the hero, the victim, and the villain, really are about relationship, and they show up in relationship. And we see it all the time in media and movies and some religious texts.
A lot of religious texts. Let's be honest.
Yeah, and even new age thinking or entrepreneurial thinking, the whole impact movement or save the earth or all that stuff, where something can be a noble cause. But again, these things can get out of balance, right?
Right. It is about balance, because we as individuals can have all three of what you're talking about bouncing around our head, like you said. So we have the power to be all three and are guilty of being all three. So that is interesting. So what advice would you give someone about finding peace? Because it's very important to have, even if it's 5 minutes of peace a day, it's very important to have some sort of peace and calm.
Yeah. Well, and segueing off that drama triangle and the being guilty of those things, it's like letting go of the guilt. Because one of the things I think that keeps us from peace is being in that reward and punishment cycle, which goes along with why we might want to be the hero, the victim, or the villain. It's like, because we're trained that, about reward and punishment. And mostly we focus on the reward, that success, we should be successful and we'll be rewarded with lots of money or enough money to survive or whatever it is. And so really letting go of the guilt and the blame and the shame is one deep thing that can be done to find peace, to find okay, bring in that acceptance of we're human. We do have this animal reptilian part of our brain, plus all the intellectual stories of religion and heroic savior stuff, combined with our animalistic attack brain and nervous system, right? So it's part of what the human experience is. So we're all bound to go into those moments or have had those experiences as a soul. So the more we can let go of any guilt and shame around when we do go to those places, the more space is created for peace to come in and rewire from the inside out more and more, to live in that vibration and that experience of peace. And again, the breathing and the grounding and the centering are all just really important checkpoints, touchstones. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So that is wonderful. So where are some of your favorite locations Like when you're out in nature, do you like to be like on the beach, or do you like to be at a park? Do you like to be in the forest? Do you prefer the back patio? Where's your favorite peaceful place to go to just center and rewire?
Yeah. Yeah. So you're so intuitive, because that's also what I was thinking was like, and if none of that works, just go out in nature till you figure it out. Because, it's the same thing I was talking about of removing yourself from the picture. Sometimes you just need an environment switch, like get out of the house or the office where that energy is like a big pressure cooker, right? So, um, my favorite nature spaces, I mean, growing, I think it's in my memory, my cellular memory. Of course, I have an affinity for the fresh mountain air, the aspen groves. I used to go as a child to the aspen grove at our house, and I named my business, after the aspens. And even the trees call me wherever I go. Like, when I was in Washington, there were these beautiful cedar trees. Now
Mm.
in Western Australia, even though I haven't, it's just the gum trees. Like I'm at the supermarket and the guys are like, buy this cup. And it has like gum trees all on it. It's like about here it is, about the
Oh,
gum. In the big gum trees live the little gummet babies. So
so
I'm
you had
looking
to
at,
learn about the gum tree.
yeah,
Why is it so important?
we have a golden gum tree, which is this like beautiful golden bark. Um, and water is another one. I'm definitely more comfortable with like a mountain stream, putting my feet in. Like
Yeah.
ocean kind of terrifies me. That's been interesting. I kind of already knew that, but coming to some ocean places, I am like really scared of the ocean. I must have drowned in past life or died in a tsunami, but so I'm co-regulating my nervous system with the ocean.
I love the ocean. I love the water. I love being near it. I'm just not one to want to be in it
Yes.
myself. And it's not, it is terrifying for me because it's so big. It's like once you get out to a certain point past the water and you don't see land, it's terrifying. But I'm more
Mhm.
terrified of what's in the water that can eat me.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel the same way. Even if I'll go in where my feet are still touching the bottom, but I'm noticing my nervous system already like on alert. And um, it's really interesting being here in Western Australia with the Indian Ocean. It feels like I'm at the edge of the world. Like the
Oh,
ocean, I've
wow.
never seen an ocean like this. Like literally, it's just like this horizon line, and it just looks like
You're just going
it
to
just.
fall off if you believed in flat earth.
Yes, exactly. I had that thought. Gosh, flat earthers, I feel it. Mhm.
So those are some ways you find peace and would suggest for others is to go out and find a nature aspect to it, because we really need to reconnect, and that's a peaceful spot where
Yeah,
you're in nature.
it's a practice. Maybe I'm just someone who always likes to push my growth edge, but even, I'm like, hey, I'm gonna walk in the water, even though all these alarm bells are going off, and then it's like I find that peace. But it's also listening, because like in Hawaii, for example, I felt much more peace with the ocean there. So it's also noticing the
Okay.
different locations and to the land. And I think there is a relationship with nature, and so it's a good place to practice, because we're maybe a little less neutral with humans. So
Exactly. And it is about growth and pushing those boundaries, even where you find peace. You mean just taking that first step anywhere towards it, whether it's meditating, walking in nature, swimming in the ocean, because we know salt water is good for our skin, it's good for our soul, it's good for a lot of things. But I'm like you, only up into my waist. Then I'm done. I'll splash some on my face and go back out.
yeah, yeah.
So you do teach classes, and can you tell us a little bit about those classes?
Yeah, so I have I like the little website running along the bottom. It's so fancy. Yes, I have like a 4-week, 4-module self-study class. So it's actually study at your own pace. So sometimes people go through it in 4 weeks, other times it's longer or quicker. And that teaches about intuitive nature, just energy practices to connect with, yourself as spirit, grounding, awareness, and energy flow, as well as some fun energy tools and practices to like tune in or focus on things. And along with that, there is a live weekly space where students gather and I channel a specific topic for the class. We go through the main practices because there are similar just things, the grounding and centering and stuff that there's an invitation for. And then there's usually a specific invitation depending on, the energy of the day, of what's going on with everyone, the world, all of that. I know once the pandemic broke out, it's like, oh, okay, wow, this is a really great space to have to be able to come together.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's the whole blessing and curse. It brings you together with more people from all over the world you wouldn't have normally met. But there are also technical difficulties.
Yeah, so it was a shift. I mean, I was doing online stuff before the pandemic and using Zoom before that. And there were, different in-person communities I was part of. And I know for a lot of people, it was a huge shift going from the in-person.
Some people make the shift well, and some people just need the in-person.
Mm-hmm.
So it depends on what you need at the time and who you are as a person.
Yes. Yeah.
So Jennah's website is scrolling across the bottom. So if you are interested in taking classes or learning more about what she offers and the readings and courses she has to offer, I definitely suggest you visit her website. She also has up there information about her, who she is, how she helps people, the information about the cacao, which just is yummy. I love cacao. So I'm a chocolate fan. I love I can eat 100% dark chocolate unfiltered. So I'm a fan.
Maybe that's what brought us together. It was the cacao.
Yeah. So definitely check her out. And if you're interested in learning and reconnecting with nature and learning about following your intuition and how to really tune in, again, she's got the 4-week self-guided, as well as you can join in the community whenever you feel like it. So thank you, Jennah.
Yeah,
And
thank you for having me
here. And I would love to have you on again at another time.
Yeah.
Yes, maybe you'll be in a different spot.
Yes, exactly. It might be from somewhere else in the world or a different spot in the house.
So definitely. So I want to thank you for your time. And I want to thank you for all the wonderful advice that you have provided to myself and the viewers and listeners. And we're going to sign off. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Take care.